And
So is there a term for
Yeah.
why people group up in their beliefs? Some groups that are bound together with a common cause.
Scientists that all have credentials get together in their groups and come up with consensus. They decide what is science based off of, that consensus. Okay, this is the best evidence. This is the best explanation. It
And
depends
then they
on...
start convincing others that this is the way we're supposed to go. And then it gets so big that everyone's got to support it or you're not part of the club. Okay, brothers and sisters, welcome back once again to the greatest show on earth, The Last Dispensation. I am your faithful host, Troy, and I'm going to tell you guys something. I met, through email, one of the most interesting, profound, kind of quirky, but one of those genius guys that you used to like to hang out with, and maybe you played Dungeons and Dragons with them or something like that. His name is Ed Goble. And let me get his bio up here. Ed Goble is a senior software engineer by profession and is an Okinawan martial art instructor. Really?
Yeah.
And a theologian, of course. That's why I'm having you on. You're not embellishing this Okinawa stuff, right? This
No, I'm a
Okay.
5th degree black belt. Yeah.
Okay, cool. He is a former member of FAIR. And I'll tell you a little story. The Foundation for Apologetic Information and Research. That's what FAIR stands for. It used to be called FAIR. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what it used to stand for. They kind of changed what the acronym means now.
Okay.
I'll have to look.
And then they also used to be called FAIR Mormon.
Yeah.
And now they're FAIR Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
Which is still not the full Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saint name, but also but it's better than FAIR Mormon, right?
Their new meaning for their acronym is now Faithful Answers, Informed Response.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But it used to be the Foundation for Apologetic Information and Research. So,
well, it seems like people are distancing themselves from the actual label or term of being an apologist for some reason. Yeah. Apologetics is, I don't know. I think the whole world is trying to change terminology. Every 6 or 7 years, we say, we can't say this anymore. Now we're going to say this. And then 7 years later, we'll go by and they'll go, we can't say that anymore because it's not politically correct or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. Or they just changed what they what they feel it should mean.
Sure.
So Ed has authored a number of books and a large number of research papers on various theological and science-related subjects, focusing on poorly understood areas with the intent to strengthen the faith of members of the church and finding the best evidence-based information available. He has spent a couple of decades studying linguistics,
archaeoastronomy,
and the symbolic origin of the oldest alphabet, Egyptology, and other Book of Abraham-related areas in order to vindicate Joseph Smith's revelations. He was one of the principal original architects of the Heartland Theory, a Book of Mormon geography. That was pretty amazing when I found that out, when I talked to you, with Wayne May, but no longer subscribes or believes in it for a number of reasons. Okay, welcome, Ed Goble.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good to be here.
So, and I want to tell my audience, I only met you like a week ago on the phone. We didn't meet in person, but you emailed me, and then I got back to you, and we talked because I told you that I like to screen people before they go on the program, and I was intrigued. I was intrigued by that you were involved. You're not an apologist, really.
Probably not.
What would you call yourself?
I would call myself a researcher or theologian, something like that. Apologetics is a branch of theology.
I also find it fascinating that I also find it fascinating that you were involved with the Heartland Theory.
Co-authored a book with Wayne May. It was called This Land and Zarahemla and the Nephite Nation. Anybody can look that up. It's still for sale out there. Wayne May's still selling it, I think, on Amazon. So they can see my name that's on that book.
Okay. All right. Start, Ed.
I'd kind of like to start out with kind of some of the philosophies that, make science important. Start out with some kind of generalized definitions and some kind of assertions, I guess I would call them. And these are just ideas that kind of put things in the proper perspective as I like to think of them. Okay. So a lot of things that I deal with are kind of based off of, methodology where I try to identify things like the best evidences that I can find for things, right? And to come up with explanations that harmonize with the gospel and with the evidence available. Okay. So like, for example, starting out with science is a secular methodology for gaining information. Okay. It's not the same as atheism, contrary to what some people think. Just because some science people are atheists doesn't mean that science is atheistic. It's non-theistic. Secularism can be evil when it's paired up with atheism, when they attempt to destroy faith. Okay. But secularism and science in general are useful when kept in their proper box. All right. Those things can be a parallel pursuit to faith-based endeavors. Okay. So science is a tool that we can use to kind of be informed by it. We don't have to be entirely into it as some sort of worldview that all things, that we subscribe to, they don't all have to be scientific. Does that make sense?
Well, science is there to enhance our faith.
Yeah.
It's okay. For instance, I just talked, I had a Mark Stoddard. He is I've had him on a couple times, and we talked about a painting that the Russians have where it's old lore in Russia that the Russian Orthodox Church has, that the painter depicted Christ coming to Russia after his resurrection. And that's something they believe. So that's not, we don't put our faith in things like that. That's just kind of a little, it's not the catalyst of our faith, but it's an enhancer maybe that that Christ did come to other nations. So that could possibly have happened, or it could be lore. But things like that. So you're saying science helps us, but it's not the end all of how we find truth, right?
Yeah,
or
right.
Absolute truth.
But there are things that we can draw upon from it, right? So now going to a science-based theory, okay, evolution, for example, and not to get into this too much, I'm just using it as an example. It's the result of pure science, unencumbered by anything else. There's no religious concerns. There's nothing else but pure science engaged in research and engaged in, experimentation, where they come up with, looking at fossils and looking at DNA and so forth, that they come up with an explanation that doesn't draw upon anything else. And I'm not talking about, where occasional things happen in science that are politics driven or fraud driven. I'm talking about something that's entirely in the box by itself. Okay. So when we bring other things into science, it can encumber science. It needs to live in this box that is, untouched by anything else. If we want to be informed by the theory of evolution, we can be. If we don't want to believe it, we don't have to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But if someone that is a pseudoscientist wants to sort of try to thrust his own philosophies on science, that doesn't work out well, because application of proper science philosophy dictates what is real science. And
so is there a term for
yeah.
why people group up in their beliefs? For instance, you're probably talking about not just secular scientists, but also our educators, some of our groups of cliquey, let me rephrase that. Some groups that are bound together with a common cause.
Yeah, it's called.
Does it start with one person's idea or their narrative that they've pushed, and then they start convincing others that this is the way we're supposed to go, and then it gets so big that everyone's got to support it, or you're not part of the club?
It depends on the realm of things that you're dealing with. In the case of science, we've had hundreds of years of, people collaborating with each other. Okay. And it started out with like the Royal Society, where, different scientists got together, Sir Isaac Newton and all these people, where they decided on, different principles like the scientific method. So we've got hundreds of years of this kind of thing going on, and in academia, things worked out to where when scientists that all have credentials get together in their groups and come up with consensus, they decide what is science based off of that consensus, where all of these people that are credentialed sort of decide, okay, this is the best evidence, this is the best explanation.
But isn't it politically driven too, a little bit? Or
when
I say politically, it's institutionally driven.
It's institutionally driven in a sense, somewhat, but it's not generally politically
corporately driven.
Just that's not the general case, except maybe in the case of, like, say, climate change, where some people believe that might be politically driven, so I'm not going to take a position on that kind of thing, but some people believe that it might be politics driven. In the minority cases, some of it is fraud driven, where there'll be some people coming out with research that turns out to be fraudulent, but that doesn't last very long. That kind of thing is found out real quick when they can't reproduce their yeah.
So where are we going with this, Ed? Why are we bringing this up? I know why you're bringing it up, but for my audience sake, we're
bringing this up.
What are we honing in on?
We're bringing this up because in the church there's a very, very, there's a big lack of information about what science really is, and there's a lot of anti-science feeling.
That there's also the side that's too much science driven.
I don't know what side that would be.
Well, because science, to me, with my experience in life and what I've seen with science, is that they're not always right, but they always need a hypothesis, or they need an answer. And until they find a different answer, this is the answer. And this is the fact. This is the you know what I mean?
But that's the way it works, because
that's not necessarily absolute truth, though.
It's not absolute truth. It's truth according to the system. I'm talking about a system. And so that system has a hypothesis, and that turns into what they call a theory in their jargon. Okay. So a theory might as well be truth to them. Okay, what we think of the word theory is not usually what they mean by theory. Okay, when they use the word theory, they're talking about what has not been overthrown yet by better evidence. So it's the best explanation.
Yeah, but sometimes it turns into almost something religious. Like, if you don't believe this way, you're not in our group.
That's true, but club. That's true. But
you've experienced that yourself.
That's true.
We'll
That's true. Later, but I'm not going to say that science needs to be demonized as a result of the fact that some
no, not at all. That's way. Not what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
But you used people that are more. So what I'm saying is, would you like? I don't think that we keep bringing up the Book of Mormon sides, Heartland or Mesoamerica. That's not really traditionalist or progressive. I don't think that's in either camp, because the church has always not taken a stance on Book of Mormon geography.
Yeah.
They've never taken a stance on that.
That's right.
So when you see these groups studying from BYU and Mesoamerica, that's just a popular idea.
It's a popular idea with really good evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
But some may. Okay, so I don't know much about it. I haven't studied a lot of the Heartland, but we're not talking about that. That's right. Not where we're. That's just an example, folks. We're just mentioning that as an example.
Yeah, all of this is really generalized because I'm just trying to talk science, philosophy, and stuff.
And my point is that there is a side that in the church, the education side, and I've seen it, okay, that doesn't want to subscribe to the traditionalist Latter-day Saint views of the gospel anymore on certain principles.
Yeah, but
when I talked to you, I thought maybe you were more on my side with that, but maybe you're not.
I am because because when we talk about the 7,000-year period between the time of Adam and the time of the end of the earth, I guess, after the millennium, that is the 7,000-year period we're concerned with. That is the time of the mortality of probationary state, so to speak, of man, of the sons of God.
Right. Okay?
But when we're talking about man, we're not dealing only with the sons of God. When we use the generic term man, we're talking about any creature that led up to reasonably so up unto the point where Adam was on the earth.
Okay, so
when we're talking sons of God,
Hugh Nibley said that Joseph Smith didn't believe in the Watchers. Yeah. There were Watchers as a term in the Bible, but it didn't mean like when they say the sons of God came down, and that whole right?
Yeah.
It's not talking about angels. It's talking about people that left the covenant.
That's one way to look at it, the apocalyptic side of things, and apocalyptic in the sense of the ancient documents that fall under that genre, not necessarily the end of the world.
The Book of Enoch.
Yeah, the Book of Enoch goes down this road where it's talking about the Watchers being the sons of God, okay, and the angels and so forth. The interpretation placed on that by Jude in the New Testament, when he quotes that book, okay, Jude quotes from First Enoch, and First Enoch is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. First Enoch was part of the Bible. First Enoch was left out of the Bible by the Jewish rabbis and the Christian fathers around the time of the early Christianity, maybe 300 or 400 years. I'll just say Jude interpreted those as Satan and his angels.
Okay, but I would love to talk about that more.
Yeah, Satan. And when they came down and cohabited with women, that's just simply the symbol, just like in the Old Testament, of Israel being apostate, and likened unto an adulterous, nation and so forth.
But you don't believe that literally?
No, it's not literal.
Right. Okay.
So it's Satan.
It's hyperbole.
Yeah, that's the apocalyptic genre.
Okay, that makes sense.
Is hyperbole and a bunch of, symbols that are like typological.
Right. So
Okay.
I know that Hugh Nib, but we'll talk about it another time. But
Sure.
Hugh Nibley said that it was basically just the sons of God were those who
Mhm.
were in the covenant, and when they married out of the covenant, basically.
They were, but this is a type, just like the Liahona and all of that. It has multiple interpretations
Okay.
where it
Okay.
works. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that
Types and shadows. Okay.
Exactly.
So going back to science and religion
Mm-hmm.
and traditionalism and progressivism,
Mm-hmm.
I always mention Ben Spackman. I don't know why. And I'm not picking on him. I don't really know him. I've watched his stuff. I've read some of his stuff, and he doesn't click with me. But are there, like, he's into the documentary hypothesis.
Yeah.
He believes in a regional flood, but you believe in original flood.
Yeah.
Which I want to show you something later that
Okay.
I totally believe in a world flood.
Okay.
But okay, so my point is, let's get back to what you were saying before.
Yeah.
About this traditionalism or this science, about science and the gospel.
Yeah. So science is one type of thing that gathers knowledge using a certain system. Okay. And that system is well tested. And so many things that come out of that, there's no reason to really question a heck of a lot of it when it has to do with, being some of the best information available that you can draw upon.
Okay.
Getting to the point where to go down this is because it kind of sets up some foundational stuff. That's all. It doesn't have to go in that order, but it's just that's the order my notes are in.
No,
so,
you're good.
Yeah.
Then stick to the notes. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all good.
I'm excited. So, you're like a brothers and sisters. This like encyclopedia of different information walked into my life. Named Brother Ed Goble.
Yeah.
And some of the things I'm like, kind of quirky, but I'm quirky too. And then some of the things I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So I'd rather keep you than not keep you around.
All right. So theology is not science. Okay. Theology is similar to and can be informed by science, yet it must be kept separate from science. Okay. Theology becomes pseudoscience when it masquerades as science. All right. So
okay, that's where I'm coming from.
So pseudoscience is when someone tries to say that something is scientific when it's not really. Okay. Intelligent design is pseudoscience. I believe that the world was intelligently designed. That doesn't mean that I have the right to thrust that into the science arena and try to say that it's scientific. Do you understand the difference?
Well, yeah, because
but that's not scientific. That anything that we would derive from that is faith-based, and the study of anything faith-based, trying to apply rigor and academic tools to things that are faith-based is theology. Okay. And apologetics is a branch of theology, being the part of it where you're defending a position.
Right.
Okay. So because intelligent design, for example, is theology and not science, it doesn't belong in the science classroom. I don't care what anybody says. It's not science, it's theology. And when evangelicals or Protestants have their version of intelligent design that they want to bring into the science classroom. I don't particularly want my kids taught evangelical or Protestant versions of intelligent design.
So what about the Restoration? How does that fit in? Prophets.
Well, that's just part of our epistemology, where we believe that prophets reveal truth.
So do you think that part of epistemology is kind of being downplayed now by certain educators and theologians and professors and scholars?
I don't know. What I do know is that they try to sort of make things into things that they aren't necessarily, because they're trying to kind of pander to certain demographics, of people that have sort of, they don't want to accept things in the way they are literally. They want to symbolize or make everything into, or spiritualize away certain things, so to speak, or
what do you mean spiritualize? I think it's the
spiritualize or made figurative. Okay, well, maybe spiritualize is a bad word, but make everything figurative, make everything sort of not the way it's, So I look at things where I say, do I have a good reason for something to be figurative, where I have good evidence that it ought to be interpreted figuratively? For example, all the young earth creationist stuff in the Book of Mormon, that I have good reason to place a figurative interpretation on, because I believe that science has shown the way life has emerged.
Or how people believed once about the lost 10 tribes.
Yeah, precisely.
We found out, wait a minute. I think this is, if you go back and read Isaiah, he's all about symbology.
Yeah.
He's all about hyperbole. He's not, this isn't literal.
That all falls under the apocalyptic revelatory genre, where everything.
Do you believe that, that Joseph Smith was learning as he was receiving revelation? Well, of course he was learning, but learning what certain things really meant. Like, do you think he was in his infancy when it came to what the lost 10 tribes meant?
Yes, he was definitely in the infancy.
The gathering and scattering of Israel, or gathering to Zion. Because later on, he was like, first he was like, we're going to Missouri. That's Zion.
Mm-hmm.
Then later it became Zion is in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was, now it's Zion is wherever you hang your hat.
Sure. In the church. And there's certain levels of literalism and correctness on each of those levels. But how broad it goes is dependent on new revelation sometimes. So we have to, look to the past, but we have to look to our current leaders. And like I told you, I'm very zealous for, standing up for and, defending the Lord's anointed. And I believe that speaking evil of them and so forth is, not good. Not, it's breaking covenants. So anyway,
do you think there's a little bit of persecution from one side to the other? There is somewhat of a polarization in the church when it comes to doctrinal beliefs.
Yeah, right? There is, but I think that people that stay grounded, they really understand the things that are the most important, as far as like what it takes to be worthy.
You mean like all of the things that Orson Pratt taught, all of the things that let me finish.
Yeah,
that those things were fun, interesting things to expound on, but it doesn't have anything to do with our salvation.
Right.
We don't know. And a lot of the apostles in the past would orate and speak for 3 hours and expound I mean, that's what the school of the prophets was about. We're like what we're doing now. We're bouncing things off of each other.
Yeah.
But they did that with the Holy Ghost. So there were some true elements of truth in their in their orations, in their preaching.
Right.
But
you
wasn't
can't be
always, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you can't be limited to it, because the church put out a statement that said, doctrine is just because a certain authority made a well thought out, assertion or whatever, doesn't mean that that's doctrine. So it might be true, it might not, but when there's better information and something's unsettled, why would you side with something from the 19th century when you have a choice of choosing something from the 21st?
From priesthood leaders.
Why would you even side with priesthood leaders all the time on unsettled subjects?
No, what I'm saying is, if we've heard different, so why go to what one person said in the 19th century as opposed to what 50 men of God said in the 20th century?
Yes, but
that might counteract what he said. But
sure.
But let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
You just said, in spite of that, you just said, why believe any men of God if it doesn't?
I didn't say that.
No, I'm not arguing with you.
I didn't say that.
I misunderstood you.
No, I'm talking entirely on unsettled subjects.
Are we getting off the beaten path you wanted to follow?
No. This is okay right now.
Okay, good. Right.
Unsettled subjects are subjects outside what keeps us worthy. Okay, and what I mean by that is you can kind of look at what is the most foundational things of our religion. It's things such as testimony, literalism. I would, some people could disagree, but literalism on matters when it comes to the first vision. Did Joseph Smith actually see what he saw? Yes. Historically, he did, and that's 100% true. I would say to be worthy, you have to believe that. To be worthy, maybe somebody would disagree, but you have to be able to answer all of the temple recommend questions to the satisfaction of your leaders. Okay, and everything that goes along with that. Okay, maybe some people would argue that they don't have to believe that the Book of Mormon is historically accurate, and the history of the certain people in the Western hemisphere. But to me, to be totally grounded, you have to believe that. You have to have a testimony of that.
Right, of course. Well, but nowadays you can not nowadays. I think there's always been room. There's always been saints have always been allowed to doubt privately.
Yeah, they've
as
been
long as you
allowed
don't
to
get
doubt.
up at the pulpit and say the Book of Mormon. I don't believe it's a
Yeah,
historic.
and
That
they're
it's
not
historical.
They're not going to kick you out of the church. They're not necessarily going to take away your temple recommend. But let's face it, to be totally grounded, you've got to believe that historicity. You've got to believe that really happened. That those people were really true, or living people in the ancient
Well, if you don't,
times.
you're not going to get the complete what you need to get out of the gospel. You're not going to get everything out of it.
That's right.
You're going to be left in the dark.
Let's face it, the Doctrine and Covenants referred to the Book of Mormon as the New Covenant, and President Benson was all over everybody saying, in order for you not to be under condemnation, you need to take the Book of Mormon seriously. Okay, and you need to include it in your studies, and all the time keep on top of it, because it is that which, by studying it and keeping that new covenant, so to speak, you are in harmony with the Holy Ghost and what's expected of you, right? So now going to such things as Book of Abraham historicity, I would say that is absolutely required.